We think around 60,000 thoughts per day with our conscious and subconscious minds. From all these thoughts, we encounter some negative thoughts, caused by different reasons, either by our own will or by conditions out of our control, like childhood experience, societal influence, and family. Nonetheless, we will see how to use those negative thoughts to our advantage in this video. Imagine a young child, maybe 6 or 7 years old, who constantly hears, "You're not good enough," or "You'll never succeed." This child grows up internalizing these words, shaping the way they view themselves and the world. These early childhood experiences are like seeds, deeply rooted in their mind. Over time, negative thoughts blossom, stemming from the feeling of not being worthy. Childhood is often where the foundation of our thinking patterns is laid, and unfortunately, negative experiences such as criticism, trauma, or a lack of emotional support can result in deeply ingrained insecurities. The child who was told they weren't good enough might still hear those words echoing in their head as an adult, whether it's during a job interview or when pursuing a new relationship. Now, let's take a closer look at how these insecurities manifest. As we grow older, our minds can distort our perception of reality through what psychologists call cognitive distortions. Imagine someone waiting for an important call about a job interview. They've been waiting for hours, but the phone remains silent. Soon, their mind starts racing with thoughts like, "They didn't call because I'm not qualified. I probably embarrassed myself in the interview. I'll never find a good job." This is catastrophizing, jumping to the worst possible conclusion. Another common pattern is black and white thinking, where a person sees everything in extremes. There's no middle ground, it's either complete success or total failure. Mind reading is another distortion, where people assume they know what others think, often assuming the worst. How to understand and use negative thoughts to our advantage. Imagine a moment when you're sitting at your desk, and suddenly, a negative thought pops into your head: "I'm never going to get this right." It's a common scenario, but how often do we really pause to examine these thoughts? The first step in understanding negative thinking is to observe without judgment. Rather than instantly reacting with frustration or guilt, imagine yourself watching the thought like a cloud passing in the sky. It's there, but it doesn't have to consume you. You don't have to label it as bad or good. It's just a thought, one of many you'll have today. This approach creates some emotional distance, allowing you to reflect on the thought more objectively. It's like being an observer rather than a participant in your mind's activity. The next step is to identify triggers. Think about what was happening just before that negative thought arose. Were you dealing with a setback at work, like missing a deadline? Or maybe you were in a social situation that made you feel uneasy. Imagine a person who, every time they attend a party, finds themselves thinking, "Everyone's judging me. I shouldn't have come." By paying attention to these situations, you can start to see a pattern in when your negative thoughts are most likely to emerge. It's like piecing together a puzzle. The more you identify these triggers, the better equipped you are to address the root cause. It's also crucial to examine patterns. Do your negative thoughts frequently revolve around specific themes, like self-worth, fear of failure, or challenges in relationships? For example, someone might notice that whenever they're about to take on a new challenge, they think, "I'm going to fail. I'm not capable." Recognizing these patterns helps you understand that the thoughts aren't random. It's time to challenge the thought. Imagine you're thinking, "I always mess things up at work." Instead of accepting this as a fact, pause and ask yourself some important questions. Is this really true? Do I really always mess up? Perhaps you realize that while you've made a few mistakes, you've also had many successes. By challenging the thought, you're putting it under a microscope and realizing it might not be as true or absolute as it initially felt. It's often about finding a balance between the extremes. There's more to these thoughts than just the words themselves. Behind every negative thought is a feeling, often tied to deep emotions like fear, shame, or sadness. Take a moment to understand the underlying emotion. If someone keeps thinking, "I'm not good enough," they might be dealing with feelings of inadequacy or fear of rejection. For example, a person who constantly fears failure might not just be afraid of failing at tasks, but might be feeling deep-rooted shame from past experiences, where they felt embarrassed or humiliated. By identifying the emotion, you can better understand the thought's grip on your mind. Lastly, it's important to trace the thought back. Where did this thought come from? Imagine someone who often thinks, "I'm a burden to others." By reflecting on their past, they might recall a childhood where they were frequently told not to cause trouble or bother anyone. Perhaps they were made to feel like they weren't allowed to ask for help. Tracing these thoughts back to their origins, whether it's from an early experience, a past failure, or societal expectations, provides valuable clarity. It's like finding the root of a weed. Once you know where it's coming from, it becomes easier to pull it out and stop it from growing back.